When doing any kind of fantasy football draft, but especially fantasy football drafts on underdog, best ball type drafts, it's important to get as many picks right as you possibly can to separate your team and give your team that maximum upside. So I'm going to go through round by round and give you my favorite picks in every round, the guys that have the most upside and the potential to help you take down one of these big tournaments. Now, before I get to those picks, if you want to try out some of these drafts on Underdog Fantasy for as little as $3 per draft, just go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Join using promo code ENDGAME because not only will that get you access to these drafts, but also up to $1,000 in bonus cash plus a free pick. Let's start at round one, and it's going to be Malik Nabers for me. And if you've been watching any of my videos, I've already talked about this guy a couple of times. I really think Malik Nabers in year two has the potential to be one of, if not the highest scoring player in fantasy. We know the Giants are going to do something beneficial at quarterback, and we also know this offense runs completely through Malik Nabers. Not to mention, this is an extremely talented player who can do it all. Great contested catch guy, get the ball in his hands, yard after the catch. He has the kind of upside I am looking for, especially at the end of round one. As I said, I think he can be one of the highest scoring, maybe even the highest scoring player in fantasy. So give me Nabers in round one. And in round two, give me Christian McCaffrey, another guy I am planting my flag on. Yes, there are risks with Christian McCaffrey, but when you're trying to take down these huge tournaments with hundreds of thousands of players, you're trying to finish first among all these players, you got to shoot for that upside. You got to take a chance on a guy that we know has the potential to be the highest scoring player, the highest scoring running back, because he's done it every year he's been healthy in his career outside of his rookie year. Yes, there's risk with the injuries, but if he bounces back and is fully healthy in 2025, this pick is going to be one of those picks that wins people best ball tournaments. And while I don't feel as strongly about Kyren Williams in round three, it's still surprising to me to see Kyren Williams going in round three. This guy is a workhorse running back, gets all the touches in a Sean McVay offense, and we know they're probably just going to run it back with Matthew Stafford. And look, last year you were able to get this guy in like the second round, which was a value because people were worried about Blake Corum taking touches. He didn't take any touches. I'm not worried about him taking touches this year. Sure, Kyren Williams doesn't have the upside of like a CMC or a Nabers to be the RB1, the RB2, but he's got the upside to be a top 10, top 5 running back. Again, you're getting that in the third round. I'm taking my chances on Kyren Williams. And then in round four, there aren't a lot of guys that pop out to me as like, I must draft this guy. So let's just go with a QB and let's go with Jalen Hurts. This is a guy who on any given week can be the QB1 in fantasy, has that kind of upside. And you're getting him, I guess, at a discount because he's going last of all the elite QBs, right? Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, and then you get Jalen Hurts. So there's nobody I love in this range that really jumps out to me as like a must pick. So let's go with a QB who has the potential to be the top scoring QB on any given week that we're getting at a discount, and that's Jalen Hurts. And then in round five, I'm planting my flag on Chris Olave once again. Yes, there is a ton of risk here, especially with the concussions, right? Any big hit could keep this guy out for multiple weeks, maybe the season. But there's also a ton of reward here, potential reward, I should say, because we know Kellen Moore, the new head coach, going to bring in a whole new offensive system. This offense is going to be better. And it sounds like they're going to move on from Derek Carr to a new QB, whether it's a vet, whether it's a rookie. That's fine. Give me anybody but Derek Carr. So Chris Olave going into a new situation, a better offensive situation with a better QB, with still really no one around him to take significant targets. Chris Olave has a chance to be kind of like Chris Godwin was last year. A guy I think you got Godwin in like round 6 last year, Olave in round 5, who was putting up wide receiver 1 numbers every single week till he got injured. Let's hope Olave doesn't get hurt, but if he doesn't, I think he's got that kind of potential. So I'm taking the risk in round 5. And then in round 6, let's grab our first rookie, Travion Henderson. Now, I know, Pierre, if you watched our rookie video, he's really big on Caleb Johnson, and I do like Caleb Johnson, but I like Henderson a little bit more because he gives you that pass-catching ability and that home run speed that I think is a little more valuable for fantasy, especially when we're talking about upside and huge spike weeks. Obviously, it's going to depend on where these guys land. We don't know that yet. But this is a time to take a chance on a rookie like Henderson, where if he lands in a spot where he is the clear 3 down, running back, very little competition or maybe not very talented competition around him, his ADP could shoot way up. So now is the time to take a chance. I like Henderson. I kind of flip-flop between him and Hampton as my RB2 in this class. So I'll take a chance on him here in round 6. And then one of my favorite values this year is Jalen McMillan in round 7. I don't understand why he's going so low. Chris Godwin, coming off a serious injury, may not even be ready to start the season, may not even be back with the Buccaneers. He is a free agent. Jalen McMillan showed he can be the clear number 2 wide receiver alongside Mike Evans in this offense. And I know it's not Liam Cohen anymore, but does it even matter? I mean, we've had 2 different OCs in 2 different years, and Baker Mayfield has been good for fantasy as far as supporting wide receivers. I don't think that's going to change with the new OC. He's still going to be good to support fantasy wide receivers. Obviously, Evans will probably be a stud, but I think Jalen McMillan is going to have a nice year 2 leap, year 2 breakout. I'm willing to take that gamble, and I'm willing to take the discount or the value, I guess, on him here in round 7. And then another guy I think is very undervalued in drafts right now is Tony Pollard in round 8. I mean, this guy prior to like kind of the second, I don't want to say the second half of the season, more like down the stretch, I guess, when he was really banged up, was putting up solid, low-end RB1 weeks, week in and week out. I don't see why that would change. He's still under contract in Tennessee. It's going to be him and Tyjae Spears again. I don't think they're going to make any splash at running back here. He's going to be the number 1 guy. It's obvious they trust him more as the lead back, as the, I don't even want to say 1A. It's more like 1A and Tyjae Spears a change of pace back. And I think that's how it's going to be going into next season. Again, you're getting this guy in round 8, a guy who can give you RB1 weeks in round 8. I'm taking that value. And let's keep going with the theme of values, and that is David Njoku in round 9. Another guy, a tight end who can give you top 5 tight end weeks, week in and week out. Maybe even top 1 tight end weeks, especially now you look at the Browns. They're almost certainly going to draft a quarterback. They may even sign a vet, kind of like a bridge quarterback here. But regardless, it's going to be better than Deshaun Watson and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And even with those guys, we saw David Njoku was okay last year. I mean, no, he wasn't as good as he was with Jameis Winston, of course, but he was still okay. So I am totally fine waiting on tight end, taking David Njoku as my tight end 1 in round 9, and then getting a 2 or 3, probably a 3 tight end build and being okay at the position. And then maybe the biggest value in the drafts right now, in my opinion, is Michael Pittman in round 10. I get it. He was a major bust last year, but let's not forget this guy has been a good, productive wide receiver for most of his career, despite playing with some really bad quarterbacks, right? He's played with Carson Wentz. Anthony Richardson was not good last year at all. Matt Ryan, when he played with Matt Ryan, had like a noodle arm, couldn't throw the ball, barely passed the line of scrimmage. I mean, he has not had great quarterback play here, and he's still been a productive wide receiver. Not to mention, this guy had a back injury that required surgery for most of the second half of the year, and he still had a nice finish to the season with Joe Flacco. He's a clear number 1 wide receiver here. A.D. Mitchell didn't show anything to make me think he's going to make a major leap. Josh Downs is fine as a slot guy, but Pittman is the number 1 wide receiver. And sure, it might be AR again. Maybe it's a different quarterback. I don't think he has, wide receiver 1 type of upside, but it's round 10. We don't need that. Give me some wide receiver 1 weeks. Sprinkle in some solid high floor weeks where you can fill out my flex. Maybe be me on wide receiver 3, and I'll be just fine with that in round 10. And now in round 11, last year, CJ Stroud was way overhyped as a QB. People thought this guy was going to be a top 5 QB. Instead, he was a major bust. But now it's gone the other way, and people are like way too low on CJ Stroud. I can get CJ Stroud in round 11. Really? I mean, look, you gotta think, address the offensive line. They have to do that. They're probably going to bring in another pass catcher to help him out as well. The defense is really solid. They don't need to do a whole lot on defense. You got to think they're going to focus on the offense. And you got to think CJ Stroud is probably going to rebound. So last year, I was saying, hey, the CJ Stroud hype is out of control. But now I think the CJ Stroud hate is out of control. I think he's too good of a value to pass up. And honestly, I'd be fine just having Hurts and Stroud as my QBs and calling it a day. But I'd also be fine with CJ Stroud as my QB1 in round 11. Maybe go a 3 QB build since these drafts are 20 rounds. I'd be totally fine with that as well. And then around 12, another guy that was way too hyped up last year, but now is way too much of a value. That's Dalton Kincaid at tight end. Yes, I know he was also a bust last year at the position, but now we're getting this guy in round 12. He's still a talented player. He still is a good prospect, and he's obviously in a good offense in this Buffalo offense. And, what do the Bills really have at wide receiver? Like Keon Coleman, I mean, he showed maybe some flashes, but are we expecting a big year 2 breakout? Is Amari Cooper going to be back? Is Curtis Samuel? I mean, these guys, really? Dalton Kincaid, I mean, really, he should have been better last year. He wasn't. You got to wonder if he was playing through injury, but I'm willing to take that gamble this year when I'm getting him in round 12, potentially as my tight end 2, maybe even my tight end 3, depending on how you do your build and draft tight end. So, yeah, I'm willing to take the chance on Dalton Kincaid to give me some tight end 1 spike weeks in round 12. And then if we're looking for spike weeks, which we should be, I think Cedric Tillman is worth the gamble in round 13. Showed some nice spike games last year with Jameis Winston before basically missing the rest of the season with that concussion. But the Browns are in a prime position, like I said, to upgrade the quarterback position either through the draft, through free agency, or both. And that'll be good for obviously the entire offense, but also Cedric Tillman, a guy who has that spike week upside because he's a big play, downfield threat. He's not a guy that needs 7 or 8 catches. He can get you 4 or 5 catches, still rack up, 80 to 100 yards and a touchdown on any given week. So that's the kind of upside and spike upside I'm looking for this late in the draft. And I feel the same way about Dontayvion Wicks in round 14. This is another guy that was probably way too hyped up, even by myself. I'll admit it, last year. Did not pan out aside from that one game, and then everybody dropped all their fab on him, and he did nothing the rest of the season. But there's definitely a path for him now because you look at it, Christian Watson tore his ACL in January. I mean, when are we going to see this guy? Are we going to see this guy in 2025? We could be looking at Dontayvion Wicks now as a starting wide receiver for the Packers, and I get it. The Packers wide receivers are extremely volatile and extremely frustrating, but that's the beauty of best ball. I don't have to worry about it. When this guy pops off and has a big game, cool, he's in my lineup. When he doesn't, cool, he's on my bench. That is the beauty of best ball, and these are the kind of guys I want to take shots on late in the draft, the guys that can have those big weeks randomly throughout the season, because I don't miss them like in redraft where he's on your bench and he goes off, and then the next week you start him and he does nothing. Best ball, you don't got to worry about it, so give me the upside of Dontayvion Wicks. And then around 15, I'll be honest, there's nobody that really stands out to me here. So let's just gamble on Amari Cooper, I guess. I don't know. Cooper might be dust, honestly. But if he stays in Buffalo or he goes to a good situation, he could be another guy that at least pops off with some spike weeks randomly throughout the season. And again, it's best ball. I don't have to worry about those weeks where he does absolutely nothing. So don't love anybody in round 15. Let's just grab Amari Cooper and hope for the best. But I do love Ja'Tavion Sanders, the tight end of Carolina, in round 16. I think this is absolutely a steal. I think this is like the ideal tight end 3 pick in best ball drafts if you're doing a 3 tight end build, which I typically do because I don't like spending an early pick on tight end. Sanders is the exact type of guy I want as my tight end 3. He's an athletic freak tight end. We saw Bryce Young toward the end of the season last year showed that he has the potential to be a franchise QB. Now year 2 with Dave Canales could get the most out of this offense. Sanders is the exact type of tight end 3 I like because he's one of those guys, yes, in redraft, those type of leagues, he's going to be volatile. You're going to be very frustrated with him probably, but in best ball, it's okay. Give me those tight end spike weeks as my tight end 3. And, over boring tight ends that maybe have higher floors, I'd rather just have the guy that's more volatile with the higher spike weeks. And then around 17, I'm going to say, look, I can't believe Matthew Stafford is going this late. Now, if I don't take Jalen Hurts, or one of those elite QBs early, I probably will do a 3 QB build depending on who my quarterbacks are. And I'd be more than happy to have Matthew Stafford as my QB3 in round 17. Again, sounds like they're just going to run it back, the same offense. Now, yes, Stafford is not going to be a consistent week in, week out, high upside QB, but he's going to give you 5, 6, 7, weeks where he could potentially be your QB1 in these best ball drafts. So if you're waiting on QB, if you don't get one of those elite early QBs and, you're getting guys that you don't necessarily feel great about as your QB1, QB2, take Stafford as your QB3. And then around 18, another rookie I'm willing to take shots on is Jalen Noel. This is the guy I just talked about. The Packers wide receivers kind of reminds me of Jaden Reed a little bit. If he lands in a spot that a team that needs a slot wide receiver, he's got good hands. He's great after the catch. He's that kind of Jaden Reed type of guy, right? Not a guy that's going to command a bazillion targets, but he can get 3 touches and make the most out of those 3 touches. And again, that's what we're looking for late in these drafts. We are looking for spike weeks where these guys that we drafted very late crack our starting lineup multiple times a year, give us those big games out of nowhere. That's what helps not only win our pod, but helps us advance throughout the fantasy playoffs and hopefully into the finals. And another guy I feel in the same kind of vein, not a rookie though, but that is Kayshon Boutte of the New England Patriots. Had a couple of those spike games down the stretch, but there's reasons to be encouraged going into the next year. entering year 3, kind of showed signs here in year 2 that maybe he was figuring it out. Drake May looked like he can at least be a good enough quarterback in the NFL. And now with head coach Mike Vrabel there, they're going to fix the offense to some degree. Yes, it's probably going to be a boring offense, but at the same time, we don't need Boutte to be a week in, week out, starting wide receiver for us. It's round 19. Give us some of those spike weeks. Give us some of those big games, those, big yardage games, 1 to 2 touchdown games. We'll take that all day here. And even if the Patriots do something at wide receiver, which they almost have to because both their draft picks last year kind of looked like busts, it's still going to be a role for Boutte in this offense. So I'm willing to bet on him in round 19. Then in round 20, let's go with one more rookie. That is Trevor Etienne. Not my favorite running back prospect here, but I think teams are going to like him, and I think he's going to get drafted, fairly high here because the name value, right? People know about Travis Etienne, and he's been fairly productive in the NFL, but also I like the role that he could have in an offense. He kind of could have a Tyjae Spears type of role. That change of pace scat back, although he's a little bigger than a scat back, but that change of pace kind of role. No, that's not the kind of role that's going to carry your team week in and week out, but it's the kind of role that's going to pop off randomly throughout the season. And again, that's what we want in these formats. We want those guys who randomly pop off week in, they'll give us those weeks where they randomly pop off. And look, if he ends up landing in a good spot in the NFL draft, his ADP is absolutely going to go way up from here. So now is the time to draft him because I do think he's going to be drafted higher than people think in the NFL draft. So there it is. Those are what I think are the best picks right now in best ball drafts. But if you want to see those rookies that everyone is wrong about, you can check them out in this video right here.